Are you looking for a gift for somebody for Christmas, perhaps who does scrapbooking or patchwork and quilting, or maybe even has a love of art? Well, today I'm going to show you a project that's very quick, very easy, and you have plenty of time left before Christmas to make it. My name's Elizabeth and I like to sew smart. This little bag here was one I made quite a while ago. I used to put my scissors in. It's called my scissor bag, and it has 4 compartments that take my scissors and my rotary cutter. Now this was being made a long time, so this one is quite old, but I did think the other day that perhaps we could adjust that, and I've made one in like a writing. They've got pens and quills and whatnot, and it was a piece of fabric I had in my stash. Remember, sewing smart is from your stash in your cupboards. Don't buy anything new. And I've put pens in here. You could put nice pencils in. I've got some nice pencils with sparkly ends. You could put those in for somebody. You could do it for a child, or you could do it for somebody. And the good thing is, when you've got it closed, you can actually fold it up. You can roll it up, but I just use mine for my scissors, and because they're all different sizes, I don't generally fold it, but you could. And all the scrapbooking materials that people use, they could also fit into these pockets. So I thought this is a good idea. It's a quick and easy gift for Christmas, and I'll show you how we can get started on that right away. So we start with 2 rectangles of your main fabric. One you place face down, then you put a thin piece of wadding on top of that, and the other piece on the top. So it's 2 rectangles, and then you've got, for the pocket, you have 2 smaller rectangles done in exactly the same way with the wadding in between. So that is the main fabric that you need. You will also need 2 strips across your fabric, 2.5 inches, which you can make binding from. Now you will have some binding left over, but you will need 2 strips. So 2.5 inch strips, 2 across the fabric, join them together, press them, I just roll them up, and that's all you need apart from 1 button to make this project. The next step is when you've got your 3 layers together, right side down, wadding, right side up. We're going to do some very basic quilting on this. I just do a center line down, a center line across, and 2 more pieces. It's just, you can quilt however you want, of course, but I just do straight lines. So I mark halfway across, line it up, and because I'm using a dark background fabric, I just put a chalk line down, and then I will put another 2 lines here, and then on the opposite way round I'll do the halfway mark, and another one there, and another one there. Now you need to do 1, 2, 3 on here because you're going to have 4 pockets. So you need a quilting line there and a quilting line there on the long side. So it makes these pockets. So there's your quilting lines. Goes right through, and just 2 at the top and 2 at the bottom. I've drawn the chalk marks, as I said, 1 in the center, 1 either side. I've measured them, and I've done exactly the same going the other way. Halfway mark, 1 either side, which is halfway between these 2 pieces here. I've also marked the pocket again, and these lines on the pocket need to match up with the quilt lines on the main bag piece that's going to fold over. I'm going to take this to the machine now and just stitch down with a straight stitch, a quilting stitch, over the chalk lines both ways and on the pocket, and then I'll come back and show you, because we've got to put a piece of the binding fabric along the top of the pocket. Because this piece here will have constant use, whether it's scissors or pens and pencils or whatever, it needs a piece of binding to go across the top of the pocket. So as you see, I've quilted just very basically. I'll rub the chalk mark off a bit later. So now we need to take the pocket section, and we're going to cut a piece of binding just a bit longer down the width of the pocket, and I'm going to attach the binding to the top of the pocket. So if you need any help knowing how to put binding on, I have done a handy hint which you can find on my channel as well. So I'm just going to stitch the binding on the top of the pocket first. So I've put the binding on the top edge. I've top stitched mine. As I said, there's a handy hint that tells you how to do that, so I've done no hand stitching at all on the binding. I'll just snip off the binding there, and what we're going to do now is we will bind eventually around all the edges, but to make the pockets we're lining up these quilting lines, and I'm going to stitch from the top here down the first quilting line on the pocket, down the second line, down the third line to make these pockets. I will stitch, reverse stitch when I start and when I finish to give it that little bit extra strength. I've stitched through all the layers. There's the pocket on the other side, and if you can hear a bit of panting noise, it's we've had a roll of thunder, and it's my dog. So I've stitched it. This is the back. It's almost perfect, but if it doesn't get quite perfect, it really doesn't matter. So I'll just turn that over. Now I've got the pockets, and the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to zigzag right round the edge to hold all these layers. You've got 6 layers here, so it helps you when you put your binding on if you've got it just a little bit pulled in a bit narrower, so it's just thinner to put your binding on. Zigzag all the way around all 4 sides. I've stitched around the edge. Don't worry if you see a little bit of wadding showing or anything, because that will be kept in your binding, so don't worry about that. I'm going to start binding. This is the top that will flap over. I'm going to start binding, leaving about a 5-inch tail about here. This is for joining, and I'm going to stitch my binding on all the way around. Now if you stitch your binding on the top, if you're hand stitching to the back, but I'm actually going to stitch so it goes through both front and back. So I'm going to start on the back of mine and then top stitch onto the front. My binding I've put on all the way around now, and just as I said to you, I machine mine, and in my handy hint number 1 it tells you how to put binding on, because this way, I just need to cut that thread off, but this way you get the line of stitching on the back of your binding, and you get it nicely on the top as well, so you don't have to hand stitch on the back. So that's all the way around now. Your pockets are nice and secure. All we have to do is we need to put a buttonhole on to fasten it. You could use Velcro if you wanted, but I'm going to use a nice gold button because I happen to have them. Now your buttonhole foot is this one, and you'll clip your button into the back of your buttonhole foot. Make sure it's nice and tight in, and then I'm going to measure my buttonhole mark, so I'll go from about there to there, but I always do one on a scrap piece of fabric first so I get exactly the right size that I need. So I'm going to put a buttonhole there and then stitch my button on, and we're all finished. I've stitched the button on. How I stitched the button after I've done the buttonhole, there's the buttonhole. I folded the top over and then took my pen, my little chalk pen, and just made a mark on the fabric underneath where I was going to position the button, because it comes smack in the middle of that line there. So I can just fasten it up now. There it is, all ready to put my scissors or pencils or whatever in it. And I think that's a pretty acceptable gift for your friend who might make good use of it. So that's our project for today, and plenty of time for you to make that for the Christmas gift. And I hope to do another little project before Christmas, because I think it's always handy if you have a few spare. And if you've enjoyed this video, please go along to my Etsy shop and pick up the pattern. It's there with all the dimensions and everything you need to make it. And do remember to give us a thumbs up and subscribe, because that really helps us. So until the next project, I hope you have a good time sewing smart.